Good morning, and thank you for joining us as we end our annual celebration of Early Ed Month in Louisiana. My name is Dr. Libby Saunier, and I'm the Executive Director of the Louisiana Policy Institute for Children. I'm honored to welcome all of you to our virtual Child Care and the Economy breakfast briefing this morning. I'd like to thank our title sponsor, Entergy. Simply put, Louisiana Early Ed Month 2023 would not be possible without their generous support. I would also like to recognize and thank the Louisiana Association of Business and Industry for being our co-host for today's event. LABI works towards fostering a climate for economic growth through consistently championing the principles of the free enterprise system. And we appreciate how they have made a focus on early care and education as a key part of their platform. During this morning's event and for the rest of today, we invite you to share your participation on social media using the hashtag LA Early Ed Month. This month may be coming to a close, but our work for Louisiana's youngest learners is just beginning. I'd now like to turn the mic over to Candace Weber, Director of Partnerships at the Louisiana Policy Institute for Children.
Thank you, Livy. So early care and education is one of the essential services that forms the backbone of our nation's economy. Without safe, quality childcare and education for their children, parents simply cannot be full participants in the workforce. Lack of access to affordable, high-quality childcare is not only felt by working families, but it is also felt by employers and the entire state economy. Now, to put context around this, our research shows that childcare breakdowns cost Louisiana businesses $762 million annually, and it causes our state's economy to lose $1.3 billion per year. Again, this is due to impacts of childcare breakdowns on working parents, whether it be through absenteeism, having to arrive at work late, leave early, and in some cases, having to leave the workforce altogether due to the instability of the childcare system. Now, last year during Early Ed Month, we released our Business Workforce Calculator, which is a comprehensive tool specifically for Louisiana businesses to understand what those breakdowns in childcare cost their business. This tool is still available on our website, and we invite you to use it to understand the impact of childcare on your business. We often get asked, how can the business community support early care and education? Well, I will tell you there are several ways the business community can support early education in Louisiana. First, I would say join the Ready Louisiana Coalition. This coalition is a bipartisan statewide coalition of over 120 businesses, chambers, advocacy organizations, and early care and education professionals that are all aligned in seeking sufficient investment in quality, affordable care and education in Louisiana. Another way the business community can support early care and education is through offering childcare benefits or subsidies for their employees, or through directly providing childcare services as a business investment in local workforce preparation for their community. To learn more about the strategies that businesses can use to strengthen their local early learning system, please download our local funding toolkit from our website, in which you will find more examples of how private industry has stepped up and stepped in to help their employees with their childcare needs. The web address for all the tools mentioned this morning are available in the description of this video. So now I'd like to turn it over to Stephen Waguespack, President and CEO of the Louisiana Association of Business and Industry. Stephen will share a few remarks and introduce this morning's keynote speaker. Stephen?
Thank you so much. I appreciate being here, and thanks for having me on. A few brief comments before I introduce our great speaker. As the leader of the state's Chamber of Commerce and the leader of the state's Manufacturing Association, we hear from all over the state of businesses who talk about the workforce challenge in this state. And it's a complex challenge that needs a complex solution. It's very rare in the public policy world where you can accomplish several initiatives with the same targeted goal. And that's what early education does for this. We need to improve early education in our school system to ensure that we have kids prepared to succeed in the classroom and then learn how to succeed in the real world. And early education is critical. And while steps have been made to put a higher focus on it, we know there's much more work to be done. But that childcare piece also is an important piece of the workforce solution. Every employer I talk to, is looking for workers. In today's workforce, they want flexibility. They have complex needs. They have to juggle a lot in their personal life and their professional life. And employers, I think, are rising to the challenge and starting to realize there is a value, not just in the market, but also doing good by your employees to providing childcare solutions. And so now with smart investment from state and private leaders, you can move the needle on the early education needed to prepare kids for the success of tomorrow. And at the same time, you can move the needle on providing quality childcare options for the workforce that can help expand options for employers and expand opportunities for the employees and families themselves impacted. So it truly is a win-win that doesn't just work for the worker, but also for one of the most pressing needs we have in Louisiana and in every state, which is the desire for qualified workforce that can be productive in a workplace environment. So that's why it's such a special policy. And I'm so privileged to be part of this coalition to try to find ways to raise awareness and drive solutions on this front. But look, don't take it from me. Take it from someone who's actually in the real world, in a corporate environment, and working through what the real world needs from a workforce perspective. And that's why it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker for today, Jack McBride, who is a Ready Nation CEO Task Force member. He is a Council for Strong America board member. And he's also the founder and CEO of Contec. I'm going to give you a little bit of his background, but he has so many extensive awards and accomplishments. I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes version. But he did receive a BA from Duke University and an MBA from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania in 1980. He worked at Millikan for 6 years in various capacities before leaving and starting Contec in 1988, along with Jim Smith. Contec is a manufacturer of wipes, pre-saturated wipes, disinfectants, and mopping systems used in clean room environments and in healthcare. Starting from zero, the company has seen amazing growth over the last 30 years, and it's become the global leader in critical cleaning products of the pharmaceutical, biotech, and medical device industries. The company currently employs over 700 employees, with 2 manufacturing locations in South Carolina, 1 in China, and 1 in the UK. He was last year, he was elected to the South Carolina Business Hall of Fame and recognized as an outstanding business leader. That is only one of many awards and accomplishments he has received over the years. The company itself has received many awards and accomplishments. So you can tell the culture is driven not just by the individual and Jack, but throughout the company and all of its employees and the impact it makes in its community and throughout the state. He's married to Stacy, and they have 4 adult children, John, Harry, Sally, and Kate. So it's my privilege to introduce you to today's speaker, Jack McBride.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Stephen, and thanks to all of you for allowing me to talk with you today. I thought I would base this talk on my journey of learning about the importance of early childhood and why it should be important to all businesses and all Americans. As Stephen mentioned, my wife and I have 4 children. When our kids were born, I was under the misunderstanding that the only thing babies really did was cry, poop, pee, and eat. What I didn't know at the time was that the other thing that they are doing 100% of their waking time is learning, or at least wanting and trying to learn. I did read to our children because that was what everyone told us to do, but I didn't understand just how important this and other parent-child activities were to the healthy development of their brains. My first exposure to the massive importance of early education was as a board member of the Married Black Foundation in Spartanburg. Early childhood is one of their core focus areas. I learned some interesting facts. During the first 3 years of life, 80% of brain growth takes place. More importantly, during that time, a significant percent of brain development also occurs, or at least should occur. However, for that brain development to occur, an infant or toddler needs a significant amount of interaction with family, friends, childcare providers, and especially parents. As we talk and play with infants and toddlers, they listen to our words, they read our body language, and they see our facial expressions. More importantly, they start to learn how their own actions affect those of the person they are talking to while these interactions occur. So as these interactions are happening, the brain is building the synapses and processing ability, which allows it to think in the background while the interactions are occurring. What makes this so valuable is that these synapses and processing capabilities are essential for arriving at 4K and 5K ready to learn. A child is then able to watch and listen to a teacher and their brain will be working in the background to understand how these new learnings relate to past experiences and previous learnings. There is an old study out that says many young children with disengaged parents arrive at kindergarten having heard almost 30 million words less than many of their peers. This is an attention-getting statistic, at least it got my attention. However, more recent studies have shown it's probably overstated, but it does highlight an important fact. There is little debate that children raised in an environment that regularly includes meaningful interaction with parents, other family members, and caregivers arrive at school much better prepared to learn than those who are not. And the percentage of children arriving unprepared tends to be higher in children coming from at-risk or impoverished areas, which is understandable given the issues these folks face in getting through the day. The saddest part is that statistics show that if a child comes into kindergarten not ready to learn, it is unlikely they will ever catch up with their peers and will be behind for their entire school career. Let's talk a bit about parental engagement for a minute, because that's where I have focused much of my effort. First and foremost, parents are a child's first and most important teacher. Children start learning from their parents on day one and will continue for the rest of their life. Parents are also a role model for future behavior. As they say, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. As a company, we work to educate our employees as to how important 0 to 5 is to their child's future success, especially for our new parents. One program that we support, which is spreading in South Carolina, is called the Palmetto Basics. The Basics were created by Dr. Ron Ferguson in Boston under the name the Boston Basics. The Basics are 5 simple things that parents, grandparents, and caregivers can use every day. These guidelines can be used by people of all backgrounds and act as simple reminders for how they interact with their children. They are: manage stress, maximize love, talk, sing, and point, count, group, and compare, explore through movement and play, read and discuss stories. I realize that managing stress and maximizing love can be especially tough for new parents, especially those struggling to find housing or to put food on the table. But these basics really appealed to me because they are essentially free and easily understood by all. It can be done by any parent, regardless of education or economic situation. They focus on building that critical parent-child bond, and they allow parents to be a meaningful contributor to a child's education, even if they don't believe they can be. The beauty to me is that parents don't need to be especially educated to have a big impact on the learning abilities of their child. The other program which Contec strongly supports is the Dolly Parton Imagination Library, an organization for putting books into the hands of infants, toddlers, and new parents. Looking online, it appears that Louisiana is a strong supporter of the Imagination Library, and we believe it ties in well with the basic behavior I just mentioned of reading and discussing stories. Because of my activity in early childhood, I was eventually asked to join a group called Ready Nation. Ready Nation is one of 3 primary groups under the umbrella of the Council for a Strong America. This group consists of over 2,000 business leaders who believe that quality early childhood education is critical to the future of our economy and our country. I'll talk more about that in a minute, but let me first give you a brief overview of the Council for a Strong America, or CSA. CSA is a totally bipartisan organization which brings together 3 key leadership groups to support improvement in early education through additional investment and improved policies for early childhood education. These 3 groups are business leaders, law enforcement officials, and retired admirals and generals. I'll give you a quick overview of the other 2 groups before talking about the business case. Fight Crime, Invest in Kids. This is a group of over 5,000 police chiefs, sheriffs, and prosecutors who know that investing early in a child's education gives that child a much higher chance of educational success. Why? Because there's a very strong correlation between 3rd grade literacy and high school graduation rates, and statistics show that high school dropouts are 3 to 4 times more likely to be arrested in their lifetime. So our law enforcement community knows that investing in early childhood will gradually reduce juvenile crime and lead to a higher percentage of productive, law-abiding citizens. Mission readiness. This is a group of over 750 retired admirals and generals. Here's a statistic that shocked me. According to Pentagon data, as of 2017, 71% of 18 to 24-year-olds were not eligible for military service, either because they had not graduated high school, they had a criminal record, or they were physically unfit. Obesity is the largest contributor from a fitness standpoint, which is understandable to me, given how much time kids spend sitting on a video game as opposed to enjoying physical play. In raw numbers, that meant in 2017, 24 million out of 34 million people in that age group were not military eligible. More shocking is that in 2020, this number stood at 77%, with the 6% increase adding approximately 2 million more people to the ranks of the ineligible. I can't imagine what the pandemic did to this number, but I can only guess that it continues to climb. The Council for Strong America has an office in Washington to inform and work with congressional policymakers on the importance of early childhood education. Equally, or more importantly, a majority of CSA's budget is spent working at the state level to support and implement improved early childhood policies in those states. In Louisiana, both Fight Crime, Invest in Kids, and Mission Readiness members have been very active. In April of 2022, Fight Crime, Invest in Kids released a report during a press event at the Capitol called High Quality Early Care and Education is Crime Prevention. At that event, St. Charles Parish Sheriff Greg Champagne stated, "You can't plant a seed and expect to have a full-grown tree overnight. You plant that seed now to have that full-grown oak tree in 20 years. Same is true with our kids. We invest in them now, so later down the road, we can see our investments pay off in better educated, law-abiding adults." This event helped generate support in the legislation, which eventually led to over $40 million in annual funding for improvements in early childhood education, an additional one-time investment of $40 million into the child care industry. At the federal level, a recent important policy win that CSA supported was congressional approval of an increase in funding for home visitation programs for pregnant mothers, especially those in the at-risk communities. Studies have shown that these programs help parents understand how to nourish, educate, and love their newborns, with better educational outcomes being a result of this early intervention. Now let's discuss the business case for investing in early childhood and why we would encourage all of you to join us in this effort. Let's start with the short-term issues. Contec is a manufacturing company, and we employ about 500 people here in Spartanburg. But we have, for the last 5 years, we have had over 30 job openings in our plant. In looking at the statistics, South Carolina and Louisiana have about the same level of unemployment at 3.5%. I would bet that you business leaders listening today have encountered similar issues with getting enough people to run your businesses. Being a manufacturing company, when we can't get enough people, we either have to turn away new business or push our existing staff to work over significant amounts of overtime, neither of which is a great option. One of the primary reasons we've lost or cannot attract new employees is the lack of affordable childcare in our community. This is a nationwide issue with large repercussions. Ready Nation did a study in 2018 that estimated that the cost of the childcare crisis was approximately $57 billion to the U.S. economy. This study was repeated last year, and the new numbers show that the cost of the childcare shortage to our economy is now approximately $122 billion. The pandemic truly decimated the childcare industry, which saw 20% of existing facilities shutting down and approximately 80,000 workers leaving the industry. The breakdown of this cost goes like this. Roughly $78 billion is borne by potential employees in the form of lost wages, lost time, and lost opportunities for the folks that either can't join or had to leave the workforce because they have to care for their children. This number is disproportionately borne by women who more often than not are the ones who stay at home or go back home for childcare responsibility. $23 billion of that number is borne by employers who end up missing business opportunities like us, or have extensive overtime like us, lost productivity, quality issues, and high turnover like us. From Contec's standpoint, we have incurred significant costs in terms of overtime, turnover, safety, and quality. Employees also get distracted when their children are not properly cared for. At Contec, the majority of our quality and safety issues occur because of distracted employees. With a significant portion of our business being pharmaceutical manufacturers, we cannot afford many, if any, quality issues if we want to keep our customers. The final $21 billion in costs is borne by taxpayers who end up footing the bill for benefit programs which are needed to support the families of parents who might otherwise be working. Our country also suffers in the form of lost tax revenues that increased employment would bring. And if you're like most employers, you see an increase in the number of retirees as we see the baby boomer generation continue to leave the workforce. These employees and their experience are hard to replace. And at Contec, we're not sure where we're going to find their replacements. Ready Nation surveyed over 400 business executives in 2021 and found that the majority of those surveyed wanted to expand childcare resources for their employees. But like Contec, there are major financial and logistical barriers preventing us from doing so. Meeting the childcare needs for everyone will take a combination of public investment and incentives for private investment. South Carolina and Louisiana are front and center in the childcare crisis. In both states, 42% of all residents live in a childcare desert. A childcare desert is an area in which there are more than 3 times as many children as licensed childcare slots. So it's no wonder why care is so difficult to find for parents in those areas. And as we know, licensed childcare is very expensive. Infant care in both states costs almost as much as public college tuition. And this is just not feasible for most families. Early childhood teachers in Louisiana and South Carolina earn less than kindergarten teachers, actually about half as much each year. More often than not, this is the same throughout the country. If we are going to repair the childcare industry, we need these teachers to be compensated fairly to keep them in the classroom, thereby allowing providers to keep their doors open and give kids the education they need. However, to me, these short-term issues, while massive, are just the tip of the iceberg that our country will soon hit. The bigger issue is how are we going to train the workforce of the future? To go back to an earlier point, if 77% of the 18 to 24-year-old population is not eligible for the military, what does that say about the workforce available to our businesses? Jobs in the future are going to require significantly more skill and a higher level education than previous generations. For example, as a manufacturer, we are investing as rapidly as possible in automated processes with sophisticated machinery. Most US-based manufacturers are doing the same thing, and as manufacturing jobs return to the US, they will not be the same unskilled jobs which left our country to be outsourced in Asia and elsewhere. Running an automated process requires a higher level of education, the ability to work in teams, and the ability to make decisions on the fly. The recent CHIPS Act is a great example of this. Bringing semiconductor manufacturing back to the US is critical to our independence from chips made in China and Taiwan. But if we don't have the employees to fill these technical jobs, we are still going to be too reliant on imports. But these technical skills don't apply only to manufacturing. We are slowly seeing automation and sophistication coming into all sectors of our lives, not just in manufacturing or on phones and watches. We see it in fast food restaurants, banking, home appliances, automobiles, and even exercise equipment. The question becomes, who is going to be around to fix this stuff when it breaks, or even provide the human support that is often needed to make the equipment and the applications function properly? I had a frustrating example of this a month ago. I ordered takeout from a well-known Chinese restaurant chain, and the app said the food would be ready in 30 minutes. When I got to the restaurant 35 minutes later, I was standing in line with a mixture of people waiting for both tables and takeout. Fortunately, I was not in a rush, so I sat down for a glass of wine at the bar. 3 glasses of wine, and an hour and 15 minutes later, my food was finally ready. The problem was that a real person had to go into the app on the restaurant end and change the wait time in the app. The variable nature of the restaurant business is really not programmable. It takes knowledgeable, engaged employees to do that, but nobody was up to the task that night. Needless to say, I won't be ordering out from that restaurant again. This brings me to my last point. As a nation, we compete on a global scale with all countries. At this point in time, our main competition comes from Asia, especially China and India. Contec has a plant in China and a sales office in India, and I can tell you from firsthand experience that education is a huge part of their culture. The family unit and family values are very strong in these countries, having developed this strength with a culture built over literally thousands of years. These cultures view education as the fastest path to getting out of poverty to a productive career and economic prosperity. It is certainly working for their economies. In 1980, the US economy was $15 trillion, China was $5.8 trillion, and India was $200 billion. In 2021, the US economy was $23.3 trillion, while China was $17.7 trillion and India was $3.1 trillion. I can only see this trend continuing if we don't focus on the things we need to do now to build our competitive position for the future. To compete over the next 50 years, education is the key. And early childhood education is the foundation for a successful educational career and life afterwards. Engaged parents and quality childcare is critical for building that solid foundation. We will need workforce participation to be as high as possible, not only to meet the needs of our businesses, but also to reduce the number of families dependent on social benefits to meet the needs of their family. Think about the positive financial impact that increased workforce participation and reduced social costs would have on our country. The good news is that if there is one issue that should be truly bipartisan, taking proper care of our infants and toddlers is that issue. In fact, most congressional leaders on both sides of the aisle support doubling the country's investment in childcare and early education. So the three key points I would want you to take away from today are: one, the 0 to 5 ages are perhaps the most important in terms of developing a child's brain and preparing them for a successful educational career. If they arrive at 5K unprepared, it is unlikely they will catch up with their peers and are more likely to be a burden on rather than a contributor to our nation's economy. Our nation's childcare crisis causes extensive damage to our current economy, and more importantly, it can derail our long-term economic prospects and competitive readiness. 3, business can play a role in bringing this issue to the forefront, both with policies within our companies and by reaching out to local, state, and federal government officials to express the urgent nature of this crisis. As the voices of the three groups in the Council for a Strong America tell us, investing in early childhood education is a key component for safer neighborhoods at home, a strong military for our national security, and an educated workforce to maintain our ability to compete in the global economy. I ask that you join us in supporting this critical need to improve early childhood in America. So now it is my pleasure to turn it back over to Dr. Sonier with the Louisiana Policy Institute for Children to moderate the question and answer portion of today's event.
Thank you so much, Jack. And also to Stephen for being here. When the voices of business and industry are at the center of this conversation, it has helped us move needles in the state of Louisiana in a significant way. I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity, as I see some questions coming in, to share that as the COVID relief dollars leave our state and leave all the states around the country, just in Louisiana, that's a $200 million gap. That means 16,000 children are currently losing access to quality early care and education, while our state has record low unemployment. And so all the keys of the puzzle, the pieces of the puzzle that Jack brought up, and as well as Stephen with LPIC, is that we know this is an economic issue. It's a workforce of today and tomorrow issue as well. And so it's something we really critically have to pay attention to. Jack, a question that just came through was, how can businesses begin to invest in early care and education for their community? Where do they start?
For me, as I said, I didn't know about the importance of early childhood. So I think bringing this issue of how important early childhood is to your employees is a great way to start. Just let them know that when they have a newborn or they have a grandchild or whatever, talk to that child and interact with it and get their brain to work. I mean, all the games you play, the pie and all those things, they're important, and you don't realize how important they are. So that's where I would start. Next, obviously, we would love for people to join Ready Nation and what we are doing to bring awareness to this issue at the state and federal level. And then work in your hometown with different, be it not-for-profits. We have a home visitation, I forget what it's called, but a home visitation program here in Spartanburg that we support. So get involved in your community and what you can do locally to support early childhood education.
Absolutely. And I would also say, Ready Nation has been a strong leader both at this different state levels as well as at the national level. We're fortunate here in Louisiana that we have the Louisiana Business Roundtable, which are C-suite level executives who really are solely focused on increased investment in early care and education in our state, as well as our Ready Louisiana Coalition that is now 120 organizations strong, from economic development to, Entergy, our only Fortune 500 company that we have in the state, to, organizations and chambers throughout the state, as well as nonprofit leaders. And so there are multiple opportunities, whether it be Ready Nation, Ready Louisiana, or the Louisiana Business Roundtable for Early Childhood, to get critically plugged in to early care and education in the state of Louisiana. We saw all kinds of things happen during COVID. We learned a whole bunch, a lot of things we didn't want to learn. But one of the things came very, very clear in all of the COVID pandemic was that childcare, and particularly early care and education, is the economic backbone to our state. You can't go to work if you don't have a place for your little people to be, that are safe and they're being educated. Currently, we have 60% of our kindergartners entering into kindergarten not ready to learn. Dosage matters. Those first 5 years of life, having access to high quality early care and education matter. It makes mamas and daddies and caregivers be able to go to work. And to Jack said, all those things like PPI and reading and singing and all the magic of little ones, everything that we do matters. And so it is with great pleasure that I want to extend, one thank you to a final thank you to all of our partners, our sponsors, our hosts, our business leaders, our legislators, our media partners, our parents, our child care providers, and our supporters. You made this month possible, and it was no small task. And so we at the Louisiana Policy Institute for Children are incredibly grateful. I also need to do a huge shout out to our team at the Louisiana Policy Institute for Children, from Jasmine, Victoria, Candace, and Ruth Ann, and Rhea, who just left us, to all the partners that we have. We couldn't do this work without you. So it is my pleasure to close out a robust and successful month of programming in recognition of Early Ed Month. Let's remember to continue the passion for early care and education for this sector displayed this week throughout the year, particularly as we go into the 2023 fiscal legislative session. To learn more about early care and education in Louisiana, and to support all of our efforts, please follow and visit us at policyinstitutela.org, as well as Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and all the places. We hope that you have enjoyed this month's programming. We have enjoyed putting it together. And thank you for helping us celebrate early care and education. But beyond that, we know that if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if we want to go far, we go together. And we want to go far together for Louisiana's children. Thank you.